I walked into that executive boardroom carrying the biggest win of my career. 9 months of relentless negotiations, flying back and forth to Washington, dealing with NavCom's procurement officers who could smell BS from a mile away. The $750 million naval defense contract was finally mine. The champagne glasses had clinked, handshakes all around, and for the first time in weeks, I could actually breathe. That morning was supposed to be about recognition. You know how it feels when all those late nights and missed family dinners finally pay off? That's what I was expecting. Instead, Patrick Warren didn't even look up when I entered the room. The name's Ryan Palmer, by the way. I'm 48, been working defense contracts for 20 years now. Before that, I spent 8 years in the Navy. That military background? It's what made this whole story possible. So there I was, still riding high from closing the biggest deal Eastbridge Defense had seen in 5 years. Patrick Warren, our CFO, sat behind that polished oak table like he was reviewing grocery lists. Without a word, he flicked his wrist and sent an envelope sliding across the surface. It landed in front of me with this dull slap that cut through the silence. "Effective immediately," he said, tone completely flat. "You're being reassigned." The words hit like incoming artillery. I kept my face steady. 8 years of Navy training don't just disappear, but inside my mind started running tactical analysis. This wasn't right. You don't demote the guy who just brought in $750 million. "Executive assistant," Patrick added, still not meeting my eyes. Compensation adjusted accordingly. 20 years. I'd been at Eastbridge Defense for 20 years. Started as a junior contract specialist right after my Navy discharge. Worked my way up to VP of Global Defense Acquisitions. I knew every clause, every procurement regulation, every relationship that mattered in this business. Last week's victory wasn't luck. It was the result of understanding how military procurement actually works, something you can't learn in business school. I picked up that envelope with steady hands. The letter inside was clinical, efficient. My title stripped, my salary gutted, my authority transferred. But one detail made my stomach clench harder than the rest: the date at the bottom. The letter had been signed 3 days earlier, before the NAVCOM deal was even finalized. This wasn't a reaction. This was planned. In the military, we call this a flanking maneuver. While I was focused on the mission objective, they'd repositioned to eliminate me from behind. Classic tactical error on my part. I'd assumed my allies would maintain their positions. The drive home that evening felt longer than usual. I kept thinking about Lisa, my wife, fighting her 3rd round of chemo. The breast cancer had come back aggressive this time, and the treatments were running us $15,000 a month. Then there's our son Tommy, 17 and dead set on following my footsteps to the Naval Academy. The prep courses and applications weren't cheap, $8,000 per semester. And Dad, Walt Palmer, Vietnam vet, now in a care facility because his mind isn't what it used to be. $4,000 a month for decent care, but he'd earned every dollar of it serving this country. My new salary as an executive assistant? $2,400 a month. I pulled into our driveway and sat there for a minute, doing the math. The house payment alone was $3,200. Add Lisa's medical bills, Tommy's academy prep, Dad's care facility. We were looking at over $30,000 in monthly obligations on a $2,400 salary. I'd survived firefights in the Persian Gulf during my Navy years, but corporate warfare might be what finally took me down. Walking into the kitchen, I found the bills spread across the counter where Lisa had left them. She'd organized them by due date, like she always did. The oncology invoices were on top, those cold numbers representing another month of keeping her alive. Below that, Tommy's tuition invoice for his Naval Academy preparatory program. At the bottom, the care facility statement for Dad. Lisa looked up from her laptop where she'd been researching clinical trials. The scarf she wore covered where her hair used to be, but her eyes still had that spark that made me fall for her 25 years ago. "How did the recognition meeting go?" she asked. I couldn't tell her. Not yet. Not when she was fighting this hard just to stay with us. Not when Tommy was 3 months away from his academy interview. Not when Dad needed care that only money could provide. "Just some reorganization stuff," I said. "Nothing major. But lying to your wife when she's fighting cancer, that's about as low as a man can go." I knew I had to figure this out fast, before the bills started bouncing and our whole world came apart. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Lucas Bradley, this Wharton MBA I'd been mentoring for 3 years. Smart kid, ambitious, but he didn't understand the military side of defense contracting. I'd spent countless hours teaching him how procurement really works, why relationships matter more than spreadsheets in this business, how to read between the lines when dealing with military brass. The next morning would bring answers I wasn't ready for. But lying there in the dark, listening to Lisa's steady breathing beside me, I started wondering if maybe I'd taught Lucas a little too well. You know what they say about no good deed going unpunished? I was about to find out exactly what that meant. The next morning, walking through the executive floor felt like entering enemy territory. First thing I noticed was the empty space on my office door where my nameplate used to be. Just this clean rectangle of adhesive residue where Ryan Palmer, VP Global Defense Acquisitions, had been for the past 5 years. Inside my old office, they'd already cleared out my personal files. My access badge wouldn't open the storage cabinets I'd organized over the years. Even my company email was dead. When I tried logging in, the system just said account not recognized. Like 20 years of work had been erased with a keystroke. I was moving my stuff into a cubicle on the second floor when I heard voices coming from the main conference room. Through the glass wall, I could see a presentation in progress. The slide deck looked familiar, real familiar. It was my work, the strategy I developed for the NAVCOM contract, but something was off. Where it used to say lead negotiator Ryan Palmer, it now read Director of Strategic Defense Partnerships, Lucas Bradley. My photo had been cropped out completely, replaced by Lucas's headshot. The kid was up there presenting my strategy like he'd developed it himself. Lucas Bradley. I'd taken him under my wing 3 years ago when he showed up fresh from Wharton with his MBA and zero understanding of how military procurement actually works. Smart enough kid, but book learning only gets you so far in defense contracts. I'd spent countless hours teaching him the ins and outs, why certain clauses matter, how to read military brass, what procurement officers really want to hear. I remember when he shadowed me during the initial NavCom meetings, scribbling notes like his life depended on it. I'd explained how one misplaced comma in a military contract could cost millions, how relationships with procurement officers take years to build, why the military trusts people who've actually served. Watching him present my work to the board, I felt something twist in my gut. This wasn't just corporate politics. This was personal. As the meeting ended, Lucas caught my eye through the glass. He walked over with this smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'll do my best," he said, pausing just long enough for the words to sink in, "to carry forward your foundation work, Ryan." Foundation work. 20 years of expertise reduced to foundation work. "You taught me well," he added, then walked away with that confident stride of someone who thinks they've earned something they didn't. That afternoon, I was cleaning out my desk when a folder slipped from the stack. A memo was wedged inside, printed faintly like it was never meant to be seen. At first glance, it looked like routine correspondence, but one line stopped me cold. Strategic objective, remove RP. The letters were clear, deliberate, and dated 4 months earlier. 4 months. This wasn't some sudden decision after a bad quarter or a personality conflict. They'd been planning to get rid of me since before I even started negotiations on the NAVCOM deal. I'd been set up from the beginning. In the Navy, we learned to analyze intelligence failures. This was a classic case. I'd been so focused on external threats, on beating the competition for that contract, that I'd missed the inside job. While I was building relationships with NAVCOM procurement officers, Patrick and Lucas were building a case against me. The weight of it all hit me that evening. I sat at the kitchen table with those bills spread out in front of me again, doing the math over and over, hoping somehow the numbers would change. Lisa's oncology treatment, $14,750 this month. Tommy's Naval Academy prep, $7,800 for the semester. Dad's veteran care facility, $4,200 monthly. Our mortgage, $3,200. Total monthly obligations, just over $30,000. My new executive assistant's salary, $2,400 a month. The gap wasn't something you could bridge with side work or cutting expenses. This was financial devastation, pure and simple. We had maybe 2 months before everything started falling apart. I'd survived combat zones in the Persian Gulf, watched good men die, made life or death decisions under fire. But sitting at that kitchen table, I felt more helpless than I ever had in a firefight. At least in combat, you can shoot back. My phone buzzed around 9 that evening. The caller ID showed a Washington, D.C. number I didn't recognize. Normally I wouldn't answer. Too many scam calls these days, but something made me pick up. "Mr. Palmer? This is Daniel Brooks. I'm a contract attorney specializing in defense agreements. I've been reviewing the Eastbridge NavCom deal." My pulse quickened. "What about it? Did you draft Clause 72B in the original contract?" I had to think for a second. So many clauses, so many negotiations. Then it came back to me. Yes, I did. Why? Then you need to hear this. That clause is airtight, Mr. Palmer, unambiguous. If NAVCOM's designated military liaison is reassigned, they have every right to void the contract and demand full repayment. The words hung in the air. I grabbed a pen and started taking notes. It's not just enforceable, Daniel continued. It's ironclad. No court in any jurisdiction could dispute its validity. Does Eastbridge know this? They should have flagged it during legal review. But here's the thing. NAVCOM specifically requested you for this contract. They wanted someone with actual military experience, not just business credentials. They reached out to me the moment they learned you'd been reassigned. I felt something shift in my chest. After weeks of feeling erased, invisible, forgotten, suddenly I was necessary again. They want to meet with you directly, Daniel said. They're questioning Eastbridge's integrity. Without your oversight, they're already having second thoughts about the whole arrangement. When the call ended, I sat there staring at my notes. For the first time since Patrick Warren slid that envelope across the table, I didn't feel powerless. That clause wasn't just legal protection, it was leverage. And leverage, I was starting to realize, was power. That night, I dug out my old leather portfolio from my Navy days. I'd carried that thing through every deployment, every contract negotiation for the past 20 years. The worn cover was scarred with travel, pages stuffed with boarding passes and hotel receipts. I was looking for something specific, my notes from the Geneva negotiations 6 months back. There it was, in my own handwriting, Clause 72B. Any reassignment of the designated military liaison shall grant the client full right to void the contract and demand restitution of $7. $2 billion. I remembered writing it now. The NAVCOM procurement officer had pulled me aside during a break. We've been burned before, he'd said. We need your name on this, Palmer, not just the company's. Too many contractors switch people midstream after they get the signature. So I'd written that clause as insurance. Standard practice in military procurement, actually. When you're buying billion-dollar weapons systems, you want continuity. You want the guy who negotiated the deal to be the guy who oversees delivery. 20 years of intel, relationships, and protocol knowledge. They thought they could replace that with a business school graduate who'd never spent a day understanding how military procurement actually works. Classic mistake, underestimating enemy capabilities. The next morning, I composed the most important email of my career. Had to be clinical, factual, completely professional. No emotion, no accusations. Just the truth delivered like a scalpel. For your awareness, Eastbridge has reassigned operational authority away from me as of Friday. Please see Clause 72B of the executed agreement regarding your rights if designated oversight is altered. I remain available to answer questions about procurement protocols. That was it. Short, sweet, and devastating. My finger hovered over the send button. In that single click, I could unravel everything. Eastbridge's biggest contract, Patrick's quarterly projections, Lucas's stolen promotion. The weight of $7, $2 billion pressed on my shoulders. I thought about Patrick's dismissive eyes when he slid that envelope across the table. I thought about Lucas presenting my strategy like it was his own work. Their arrogance had convinced them I was powerless. What they didn't realize was that power sometimes hides in silence, waiting for the exact moment to speak. I clicked send. The response was faster than I'd expected. 12 minutes later, my phone started buzzing with notifications. NAVCOM's procurement system had flagged the contract for immediate review. All transactions frozen pending investigation. Within the hour, I could hear the chaos building upstairs, voices rising from the executive floor, rapid footsteps in the hallways. Someone was asking why procurement was showing red flags. Another voice wanted to know who had suspended the NAVCOM orders. I stayed at my cubicle, acting like nothing had happened. Just another executive assistant doing paperwork. By lunch, the storm had reached full intensity. Through the glass walls of the main conference room, I could see Patrick Warren's fist slamming the table so hard the windows rattled. How the hell did Clause 72B make it into the contract? His voice carried down the hall, all that earlier composure gone. The man who'd measured my worth in spreadsheet numbers was now sweating through his tailored suit. Lucas was trying to hold his ground, but I could see the panic in his eyes. This isn't my fault, he kept saying. Palmer wrote that clause. Why should I be punished for his mistake? His mistake. 20 years of experience building safeguards into contracts was a mistake. Then came the notification that changed everything. Phones buzzed in unison as NAVCOM's legal department delivered their ultimatum. Patrick read it aloud, his voice stripped of all authority. Effective immediately. Eastbridge must restore Ryan Palmer to his designated role as military liaison or NAVCOM. will exercise its right to void the contract and demand repayment of $7. $2 billion. The room went dead quiet. You could hear the air conditioning humming, papers rustling, but nobody spoke. A board member actually gasped. Another dropped his pen. Lucas's expression crumbled. All that earlier bravado dissolved into pure panic. The same look I'd seen on young soldiers' faces during their first firefight. Patrick rubbed his temples, the fight going out of him. For years, he'd been the man in control, the one who decided careers with a signature. Now the numbers were strangling him. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number, but the area code was familiar. Northern Virginia, where half the defense contractors in America had their headquarters. Mr. Palmer, this is Colonel Richards from Titan Defense Solutions. Titan, Eastbridge's biggest competitor. The company Patrick had always dismissed as nipping at our heels. We've been following the situation with NAVCOM, he continued. We'd like to discuss an opportunity with you. Senior executive position, Defense Contracts Division. Compensation would be twice your current base, plus equity stake. Full authority to build your own team. I leaned back in my cubicle chair watching the chaos unfold upstairs through the glass. For months, I'd been treated like a ghost. Now, the company Eastbridge feared most was offering me not just restoration, but elevation. We believe in recognizing talent, Mr. Palmer. And we believe military experience matters in this business. Military experience matters. When was the last time anyone at Eastbridge had said that? I'd be interested in hearing more, I said. But even as I scheduled the meeting, another email was coming in. This one made my pulse quicken. The sender was NAVCOM itself. Mr. Palmer, we have made our position clear to Eastbridge leadership. However, let us also be clear with you. We will not sign or move forward with this agreement under any circumstances unless your name is attached as the designated liaison. This is non-negotiable. I read it twice, then a third time. To NAVCOM, I wasn't just an employee caught in corporate politics. I wasn't replaceable. I was the contract itself. For the first time since this whole thing started, I had a choice. A real one. I wasn't powerless anymore. I was a strategic asset, the kind of person both rivals and clients were willing to fight for. And the decision of where I'd stand next belonged to me alone. The meeting with Titan Defense Solutions was scheduled for the next morning. I drove to their headquarters in Arlington, about 20 minutes from Eastbridge, but it felt like entering a different world. Where Eastbridge was all glass and chrome trying to look impressive, Titan's lobby had photos of actual military hardware they'd built. Ships, aircraft, weapon systems, real stuff that kept our people safe. Colonel Richards turned out to be exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd spent 30 years in the Army before going private sector. Straight shooter, no corporate BS, spoke in facts instead of buzzwords. We've been watching Eastbridge fumble this for months, he said. NAVCOM specifically requested someone with military background for this contract. Yet they stick you with a business school kid who doesn't know a destroyer from a dingy. He slid a contract across the table. Not an envelope this time, a proper folder with terms spelled out clearly. Chief Defense Contracts Officer, he said. Base salary $240,000 plus equity stake worth about $500,000 current valuation. Signing bonus of $100,000. And here's the important part. You build your own team. Hire who you want, fire who you want. Your show to run. I scanned the numbers. 10 times my current executive assistant salary. Premium health insurance that would cover Lisa's treatments without question. More than enough to keep Tommy's Naval Academy prep on track and upgrade Dad to the best care facility in the area. But it wasn't just about the money. For the first time in months, someone was talking to me like I mattered. Like 20 years of experience actually counted for something. There's one condition, Colonel Richards added. NAVCOM has made it clear they'll only work with you. The contract moves with you, or it doesn't move at all. That same afternoon, I signed with Titan. The paperwork took 2 hours, but walking out of there, I felt lighter than I had in months. The same $750 million naval contract, but now my name was permanently attached to it. The headlines started hitting the news wires within hours. Titan Defense secures historic $750 million naval contract. Eastbridge faces $2 billion repayment after losing key executive. Every major business outlet ran the story. Bloomberg, Reuters, Financial Times, and with each headline my name appeared. Not as a victim, but as the architect of Titan's victory. I watched the fallout unfold in real time. Eastbridge stock plummeted 12% in after-hours trading. Investors were demanding answers. The board called an emergency meeting. Patrick Warren's resignation came through on Friday afternoon. No big announcement, no farewell tour, just a terse company memo about pursuing other opportunities. The same man who dismissed me with an envelope was now slinking away under cover of corporate speak. Lucas Bradley's downfall was even faster. By Monday morning, his name had been scrubbed from the company website. His LinkedIn profile went dark. All those presentations where he'd claimed credit for my work, deleted like they never existed. The same digital eraser they'd used on me had consumed him. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just got to work. My first day at Titan, I called an all-hands meeting for the Defense Contracts Division. About 30 people showed up. Mix of former military and civilian contractors, most of them with more gray hair than not. People who understood that experience matters in this business. We're building something different here, I told them. A place where 20 years of service actually means something. Where your word is your bond. Where loyalty goes both ways. I looked around the room, making eye contact with each person. In the military, we had a code, never leave a man behind. That's how we're going to operate here. Nobody gets thrown away because it's convenient for some spreadsheet. The nods around the room told me the message had landed. These weren't kids fresh from business school looking to climb corporate ladders. These were professionals who'd been burned by companies that treated people like disposable assets. Within 2 weeks, I'd hired away 3 of Eastbridge's best people. Folks who'd been quietly looking for exits after seeing how they'd treated me. Word gets around in this industry. People talk. And suddenly everyone knew that Titan was where you went if you wanted to be valued for what you brought to the table. Navcom's procurement team made a point of visiting our offices the following month. The lead officer, Commander Peterson, was the same guy who'd insisted on my involvement from the beginning. This is how it should work, he said, reviewing our project timeline. Military professionals working with people who understand military needs. Not some corporate climber trying to figure out the difference between a frigate and a submarine. 3 months later, we'd signed 2 additional contracts with Navcom worth another $400 million combined. Titan's stock price had doubled. My equity stake was suddenly worth over $1 million. But the real satisfaction came from building something that mattered. When Tommy got his acceptance letter to the Naval Academy, I was able to write the check without worrying about the mortgage. When Lisa's latest scan came back clean, we could afford the celebration dinner at the restaurant we'd been talking about for years. Dad's new care facility has a whole wing for veterans. Better food, better activities, staff who understand what guys like him went through overseas. He's sharper now, more engaged. Sometimes we sit on the porch and he tells stories about Vietnam that I'd never heard before. "You did good, son," he said during one of my visits. Sometimes a man has to walk away from something broken to build something that works. Looking back, I realize Patrick Warren and Lucas Bradley did me a favor. They forced me out of a company that had stopped valuing loyalty, experience, and integrity. They pushed me toward people who understood that character matters more than quarterly earnings. The defense industry is full of companies that chase profits and forget about the people actually building the equipment that keeps our military safe. But there are still places, like Titan, where military values mean something, where a handshake is still a commitment, where 20 years of service opens doors instead of making you a target. Last week, I got a LinkedIn message from Lucas. He's working for some consulting firm now, probably making half what he thought he'd be earning. The message was short: "Congrats on the Titan success. Hope we can work together again someday." I deleted it without responding. Some bridges once burned should stay that way. These days, I drive to work knowing that what I do matters. The contracts I negotiate keep our sailors safe. The relationships I build help ensure our military gets the equipment they need. And the team I've assembled understands that mission comes first, always. Turns out old Navy habits really did save my civilian career. In the service, we learned that honor isn't just a word. It's how you conduct yourself when nobody's watching. Corporate America could learn something from that philosophy, but that's a lesson for another day.